Hello, Tom Blavecchia here with the latest edition of the New Theory podcast. Today we got a very special guest. I consider a legend in New Jersey, from New Jersey. So this is a collaboration with New Theory podcast and a Jersey Digest. And today we have a public relations maven. Her name is, and it's pronounced Sciaretto. Hails from New Jersey. You were named the Queen of Metal?
God, many years ago. Many years ago, yes.
Still a big title. So Amy Sciaretto, welcome, Sciaretto.
Yeah,
Welcome to New Theory Podcast. How you doing today?
Thank you for having me. I'm great. How are you?
Good. And she rushed up from Asbury Park, so really appreciate her coming in, especially on a rainy day.
Yeah, it's fine.
So let's jump right in. So people talk, so we do have a lot of guests on. Some are marketers and media people and podcasters and bloggers, but you're a true PR professional. Can you start off with what exactly is public relations?
I have these conversations all the time with students actually who are looking to get into PR, and I try to explain to them, and also my friends who don't understand what public relations is. It's like public relations is a tree. It is not dealing with the public or your adoring public. It is dealing with the public's perception of you and making sure that perception is shepherded, it's carefully strategized and carefully put together. So the tree of public relations has many branches. There's actual publicity, which is interviews, reviews, getting media to come out to see your shows, to see if they want to cover you, if they're impressed by your live performances. But it's also the interviews you don't do. If you want to be elusive and make the media want you more, it's like, remember like Kylie lip kits or Yeezy Boost sneakers. You couldn't get them, so you want them more. Yeah. So that same thing can apply to access to famous people and rock stars. So that is also a very important aspect of publicity is what you don't do, the limitation of access to you. There's also the crisis management, whereas if you tweet something stupid, it's been screenshotted before you even said it. Yeah. Nothing ever dies on the internet. So that's a whole level of if something happens or something unsavory has happened, it's just going into crisis mode, protecting the image, going over how to handle it, how to address things, how to fix things. Sometimes if they go crazy off the rails, if a member's leaving a band or a member is having issues that we need to help them work through, that's also part of the job. So that you're getting into the shit with the bands. Like you're helping them on every level, whether it's their touring business, their recorded music business, and everything else that goes around it. So that's another tree is dealing with the crisis, setting up your interviews, getting media to care, talking to media, connecting you with media, correcting information that's not accurate. I have one artist who barely does any press, barely does any interviews, but there's always a lot of misinformation about him. So my job is just tracking it down, staying on top of it, and fixing it. When a major media outlet reports something incorrect about a major artist, that can't be out there because then it never goes away. So it's a constant cycle of taking care of your public image. I don't deal with the fans. Yes, a lot of fans email me, tell me, I would love to ask my fiance to marry me on stage. I deal with a lot of that. I get a lot of those requests because my email's out there. It's on band's website.
Do you discourage that or the marriage? Just kidding.
Both. Well, I mean, what was it, 50? Is it more than 50% of marriages end in divorce? We all know why. But yeah, I try not to encourage that either. But bands also have a show to put on. Fans have paid for their ticket, and that can it just interrupts the flow. It's not always easy to do. It requires a lot of planning. You can't just say, "Hey, I want to ask my fiance tomorrow." On stage. So, but most of my work is dealing with you're serving two masters because the ultimate master that you serve is the artist because that's who you are helping build their career.
Correct.
And they're creatives and they're, creative people are passionate about their art and, they're creatives and you have to know how to kind of handle that and shepherd that and protect that and help build that and help them understand if maybe when we release it into the world, why maybe people haven't loved it yet. And that's our job to try to get it. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't, but it's also working with the artist and the media is the other master that you're serving and making sure that that you're taking care of your media partners and providing them what they need and helping them connect with your artists and helping them build each other. That's the media is the third party validation that you get. You can tell all your fans on Instagram what you had for lunch, but when you have that third party validation of a media outlet that people go to and read because they can't look at every single member's Instagram feed to find information out. That's what you're protecting.
Got it.
Relationship.
So I always kind of wondered this. You have some pretty big names. We'll go through them in a little bit, but generally the bigger bands, does the kind of the retainer for the PR for the band typically paid by the label, or is it paid by the artist, or should the artist also kind of have their own person?
It's Great question, because that can all those scenarios apply. Some of the bands we get paid through the label. Sometimes it's the band who pays us. Sometimes it might be the manager, or it could be somebody on the legal side. But most time it is usually the label, and it's a band cost that gets paid back through band revenue through the record deal. A lot of I worked in-house doing PR at Roadrunner Records for many years, and the in-house PR person. Sometimes you might have a project that might not fall really in your specialty, or the artist needs extra attention, or there's somebody out there that can get them into a world that maybe you don't have that strong hold in yet, and you work with them side by side to help that, or you just might be tapped and you need help and you need more hands. So that's why a lot of record labels will hire an outsourced person, or there's just an artist that needs a full-time person that takes care of it, takes it off their plate, and is in the corners, like I spoke about, protecting the artist.
Because we were looking over your bio on the way to prep for the interview again, and who did you work with at Roadrunner? Who were some of the bands?
I worked with everybody from Slipknot to Nickelback, Killswitch Engage, Machine Head, Meatloaf, Theory of a Deadman, Devil Driver, Gojira, tons. I worked in the radio department at first, and then I worked in the radio and video department. Then I worked in the press department. So we had a lot of great bands over the years.
So my 5-year-old son brought me to a Slipknot concert. And so I didn't really grow up around that. I mean, I grew up around that kind of music.
Sure.
That's actually my generation music, right? But like I'm finding like my son's 15 and like his friends like, Mike Kim, Ellis Dunes, Slipknot, and all the music that we kind of grew up with.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, how is that coming about? And is it a PR thing where like, did they kind of relaunch to get that group, or was it more organic, or how did that happen?
I think it's a twofold thing, because when you mention, like, it's so funny because people tell me all the time, I have like younger friends that are like maybe 30 or 25, and they say, "Oh, I'm going to see My Chem for the first time ever," because and I'm like, I saw him at the Bloomfield Ave Cafe when they were just, it was just Gerard and his friends playing music. Yeah, I used to go to Thursday shows at Club Chrome in Central Jersey, and I would hang out with Gerard, and he would talk about comic books when we were waiting for Thursday to go on. It's like a Sunday matinee. But yeah, before they were My Chem, the biggest thing in the world, we had Killswitch Engage, had toured with them with Taste of Chaos in the mid '00s, so it was like that connection. And you see, I was like, when did they become the Beatles?
Now listen, so I kind of joke around, but like there's a group of bands from that era, right?
Yeah.
Some are still very big, and we respect them. Not to pick on anybody, but My Chem went to the stratosphere.
They did.
Did you know at the time, honestly, or was it like, oh shit, you know what? Like, like
I just looked at them as the band I would see at the WSOU boat shows. That opening band, I looked at them as Gerard, as the guy I would see and would talk to all the time. And it was like, he was always, every time I would see him after that, when he was in the stratosphere, he was still awesome to me. So he was still Gerard from Newark. You know what I mean? It was always like that. It was, I just remember watching them on stage at Taste of Chaos, because Killswitch, I said, like, Killswitch toured them. I worked with Killswitch their entire career, and just watching. And I remember I turned around, I said to somebody, when did they become the Beatles? Because this generation, and I remember my oldest brother is the person who got me into music, and his stepdaughter, I remember he said to me, he goes, "Hey, I got to ask you something," because, he knows what I do. And he's like, "Do you know My Chemical Romance?" I go, "Do I know who My Chemical Romance is?" Come on. That's like asking me if I breathe air. Of course I do. He's like, "Can you help them help Deanna get into a meet?" I said, I got it. So I called up their publicist, who's a longtime friend of me. I need this. Got them in. Nice. You would have thought that I was Jesus Christ, because they were like, "You know Gerard?" I'm like, "Yeah, no big deal." You know what I mean? Because I've just been doing it for so long. I was, I used to be a writer. When I was a music writer, I got my start at CMJ as a music writer, and I used to write for Kerrang, Revolver, Alternative Press, VH1, Guitar World. I wrote for all those publications. That's how I got to know a lot of these bands. That's how I got to know.
The beats,
that's how I used to.
Like normal.
Yeah, I used to go into the studio with Thursday. That's how I've known the Thursday guys for so long. Wow. So, and then now working on a different side of things. But back to your original point about how now like Slipknot's having some nostalgia, because that record came out in 1999, and My Chem, that was the early '00s. I think a lot of people might have missed that, or were too young, and now those people, that nostalgia, everything, the '00s are the biggest thing now. The '90s, a couple years ago, when everybody's wearing Nirvana shirts, who were, probably Kurt Cobain was dead for 15 years before these kids were even born. But it's great, because that stuff is important, because you look at now, like Dave Grohl is considered classic rock, and you're like, what? He's 50 something, So I do think that there is a lot of nostalgia for that, and people are seeing that stuff for the first time. Like Slipknot this summer, they toured, and they pretty much only played stuff from that era, because that's the stuff that put them on the map, and people are experiencing that now. But also, I do think that I always say in my job, there's a lot of of people out there who were probably young kids listening to this music with their parents, and they were too young to experience it live, and now they might have jobs in these tastemaker publications.
Yeah.
And they love this stuff, and it's coming back around for them. I think people feel that way about Linkin Park. I think System of a Down is another band where it's like, I look at those bands and I was going to see them and writing about them and working with all those bands when they were in their breaking era, you know? So, and it's interesting to me to see people say, I've never seen System of a Down live. I'm like, what? Are you like, I've seen them 50 times and at like 50 different venues. The same thing with Stained, a band like Stained. Yeah. I saw them everywhere. Coney Island High. I saw them at Bowery Ballroom, CBGB's, and then you see them at Madison Square Garden. And so, you know, it's like you chart that trajectory and you watch those bands come up. And it's really on the writer side and as the publicist side, it's amazing to see that working with Slipknot. Yeah. It was amazing to see the way that they came up.
So when I interviewed Dee Snider, he said something really interesting, and it got a lot of press from it. I didn't realize it at the time, but I got a lot of earned press from the interview. He kind of talked about how the hair bands from like the 80s going into the 90s didn't see grunge coming, and grunge came and kind of cleaned their clock.
Oh, it did, yeah.
So kind of grunge came in. Where did like emo kind of fit into that kind of lineage? Was it concurrent? Was it after grunge? Where did emo
I think it came after grunge for sure. I think new metal came after the grunge era, where there was a lot of really, you know, you saw it with Korn, the down-tuned guitars, the bass heavy, the hip-hop influence. Yeah. And then it was Ozfest. You know, all those bands were paying money to get on Ozfest, getting major label deals. And then some of them really blew up and some of them didn't. I mean, I can name tons of them. I still have the CDs in my collection of bands that were signed to these major labels that were good, but just never were able to break through because there was, I think, the ether. It's hard to cut through the ether. There was too much of it. And I think that after that new metal, I think a lot of people felt it wasn't, you know, false metal, as people like to say. I think during that phase, a lot of people didn't really think that music. I think they felt like a lot of it was cashing in. A lot of it wasn't, but some of it always is. That's any trend or any style. But I think emo kind of and screamo kind of came as like a reaction to that and as the next logical, you know, development of music for sure.
Now, from the business end, or maybe the PRNM business end is looking at, and you're Adam Splitter PR, check it out online, and we'll leave a link below. And you have a lot of bands that you worked with, right? Yeah. And some are, you know, some are tier one, some are really big, some are okay, and some are small.
Some are developing,
Yeah. So my question is, and don't get me wrong, they're all probably like, if let's just say agnostically, without knowing who any of them were to a third party, they're all probably very good music, right?
Yes.
How does PR shape their trajectory? Meaning, like, was My Chem always going to be big, or did they do PR better? Because it seems like to me you have a lot of great bands, but some of them just knew how to do it correctly. And where did PR fit into some of those bigger bands that did break through?
It's a great question because I talk about this a lot with people, you know, through work. And it's like when I worked at Roadrunner, I remember when I started there, my boss, Mark, he who was one of my bosses, he was always walking around singing the praises of this band Double Drive. They had been signed to MCA. Nothing happened. They got dropped. And then Roadrunner had picked them up. And they had this song called Imprint. And he was saying, this is going to be a hit. And other people on the staff felt this was going to be like a thing. Yeah. And it wasn't. Wow. And I remember it was like, I was like, everybody here was so convinced that this song was going to take them to the next level. And it didn't happen. I remember we would have meetings where we would talk about why projects were taking off and why others weren't. And I remember the president of the company saying, listen, we all thought we had a hit and the rest of the world didn't. And that just happens sometimes. And then sometimes you realize you don't think that you had it and it just becomes a hit. Yeah. And it's a lot of things at once. I look at My Chem, you know, as Jersey legends that they are. That was they happened to hit on a lot of things at once. I think Gerard was very personal in his lyrics. He was into a lot of things that I think a lot of the disaffected youth that tend to like that music are into, comic books, you know, art and music. And I just think that it was, once that train started going, there was no stopping it. And sometimes some bands just have that. I always say that, you know, a lot of the bands I worked with at Roadrunner that were coming up in that new wave of metal in the OOs, we had Chimera, we had, you know, Devil Driver, and then we had Killswitch Engage, which was a band that's platinum. And they just hit on everything. A modern sound, melodics, they could get on the radio, they could tour with Slayer and Mastodon, and they could tour with In Flames and My Chemical Romance and Under Oath. Yeah. And a lot of bands can't do that. Killswitch could do Ozfest with Slayer, and they could do Warped Tour with Pierce the Veil.
We're just
So
coming back, right?
yeah, yes, everybody's talking about the buzz of what's going on with Warped Tour, but that's a band that was able to check so many boxes. We could tour them with anybody. People loved them. They had a cool dynamic. They lost their singer and then got a new singer and then got bigger and then still continue to be one of the most viable bands out there because people love the music and people love the people. And it was just the way they just managed to check off a lot of boxes. I think same thing about My Chem. Same thing about when these bands start popping. It's like, but there also has to be people there telling the story, because how do you know about something unless somebody tells you about it?
The narrative, yeah.
And that narrative is very, very important.
Very important. So when we were young in Vegas, I mean, it had, My Chem used, I think, Pierce the Veil. I mean, in that world, like, it was like the Super Bowl of acts.
It really was, yeah.
I don't think they'll ever get all those.
No, that was tough, man. That was really, the first one was really impressive.
Logistically, business-wise, I don't
tough.
even know how
and having
they
it
did
2 weekends, I mean, how can people stay out there in Vegas? It's hot as can be out there. So yeah, they got lightning in a bottle with that.
Well, what I found interesting though is me being a little older. There was, and I know it's called When We Were Young. There was people around my age and like in their 40s and 30s there, which I thought was pretty cool. A ton of young people, obviously, because it's a festival. But when we were in line at like In and Out, people were like, we're from like Denmark and like South America and
England, a lot of people coming over.
Phenomenon.
Yeah, because you're getting all those bands in one place, and you're like, wow, when am I going to see this band or playing this album in full? They really knew what they were doing when they captured that. It was you had a lot. You're playing on a lot of nostalgia that's taking people back to probably a happier or a simpler time in their lives. And I think once you're hitting that emotional nerve, you're tapping into the right thing there. And it's also lucrative, but you're also, people are all there because this is stuff that saved their lives, So
okay, so the other part is, and we do have some people that are aspiring artists watching this, some people that want to get into PR as a career. We're going to touch on all that stuff. But what do you recommend? Like nowadays is different though, right? So let's just say you are a young rapper or a young artist or a young singer in any way. In your PR plan, right? Like for PR, like does a PR person now kind of do their social? Like does she have influence on their social? Is it a separate channel? Like where does social media fit into the PR of 2025?
Well, it's part of your overall presentation to the public. Yeah. And there's a lot of digital marketing agencies that decide what you post, but we always try to provide content to post on the band socials. Because like I said, every member can post something on there, but when you're saying, well, look, Rolling Stone said this about you, or Spin, or Revolver, or Forbes, or Complex, whoever has said this about you, that's the validation of these are the people who are tastemakers, and they're giving you the thumbs up. So that's that extra boost that you want, that you always want. That validation from someone else, because you can toot your own horn all day on social media. So that's why when you're putting that out there, that is very important, because the social media is just you're sharing with the world and showing, if I have a band that gets a feature in Rolling Stone and then they go out and they tweet it or they put in their Instagram stories, there's gonna be other media that see that and say, whoa, maybe I should be covering this if Rolling Stone is. So I better look more into this. And that's how that snowball keeps going. Because you can be having those conversations with the other bigger outlet. And then when they see that, then they come back to you and go, hey, what did I miss here?
They call that an elephant bump, I think.
Is that what I just call it snowballing. It's just trying to keep, I always call it my approach and my team's approach, because it's not just me, I have a full team. I can't do what I do without them, is up and out. You start here, and there's some bands that are already out here, so you're trying to go out here and get more they haven't gotten. When you got the baby bands, just make that foundation strong so that they can build up. So by their next record, they're going out here.
All right.
Doesn't always happen that way, but that's always the goal.
Let's just take one of your key staffers, right?
Yeah.
Your key staffers pitching Band X, right?
Yes.
And Band X is, they're not My Chem, but they're not small. Just they will need a refresh. They have something new coming out. You need some messaging. You might need some that kind of stuff, right? And you're a little younger than me, but like pitching 10 years ago, you would have pitched, hey, Rolling Stone, Complex, if it's Rap Source. Like nowadays in 25, you pitch different outlets. You pitch like influencers.
Oh, you're pitching YouTube reaction channels. You're pitching TikTok influencers. You're pitching everything. You're pitching like a lot of, like you said, influencers on YouTube. Look, print publications, because there's so few of them. Like before, when I was writing, that's all it was. It was skate magazines, monthly music publications, arts and entertainment publications. A lot of those still exist online. The print version is gone because everybody's on their phone. It's too expensive to produce print, but print still exists.
Yeah, we may bring it back the economics didn't work for print, but it kind of worked out for us. But I do see the value in it.
Yeah, well, I think you give somebody something collectible, especially with music.
Yeah.
You're giving them like a collectible photo.
Yeah.
You know, they're always going to publish the story online anyway.
It's easier to get, but also too, like from our perspective for editorial, when we pitch, and it's, so you appreciate this. So you're the publicist for that bottled water, and that bottled water is tough to go to. If I come to you and say, hey, we have New Jersey Digest, we got a print version, it's going to have, 30,000 copies, and, we'll give you some copies, you'll get the front cover or the whatever feature. Like, it seems to be easier to get that than say, hey, we're going to do a digital one that's going to get 1 million views.
Yeah, I know. I think it's because it's something people can hold in their hands. It's still, some people are still attached to that. Me, like, I let go of CDs. I don't care, but I just need it on my Spotify, make it easy and not take up space. But I still keep every cover of magazines, frame them in my office. But when we have to pitch everything, we shifted from the print publications to focusing on podcasts before everybody else did. We really, that was important. I was
going to say, where do podcasts fit into your strategy?
It's a very, very specific medium, and I love it because I always try to, it's twofold. I love a podcast because when you got a good talker and you got somebody who's got the gift of gab and is very quotable, you have 45 minutes and you probably have a captive audience who's listening. A ton of stuff to talk about. You can break things up, share it. You can break it up into snippets, but you have content, and then other outlets will aggregate it. Oh, did you hear what Jesse from Killswitch said? To Consequence of Sound. Boom, let's take this and make a story out of it and use that headline. And then you get the doubled aggregate press. Like you said, the elephant bump, as you said, or the snowball, the up and out, as I say. But when you have somebody that's not a talker, that can be a challenge. But we always prep our artists. We try to media train them so that they understand like what they're talking about. And the thing about podcasts is they're not always quantifiable. Yeah. So I always try to tell my artists, and my staff tells our artists, here's 5 artists that have done this podcast. And it's like, if Dave Mustaine from Megadeth can do it, or, this person can do it, then it's valuable to you. And I always say, don't look at the social numbers, because I'm a Patreon supporter of several podcasts that I like. I pay, it's not much, like $10 a month, whatever. But I listen to every episode. I listen to the bonus episodes. I follow 0 of them on Instagram because unless they're true crime and I want to look at some crime scene evidence, then I look at it. I don't need to follow them. I don't need to see what they're doing because I'm going to listen every week. So it's not a metric to gauge them by.
One thing I learned, unless you're the stratosphere, people don't cross mediums. I'll give you specific examples. So for New Theory Podcast, we're pushing 100,000 subs.
That's great.
But I have like 1,500 on Instagram. I mean, I don't cross promote much.
Right, but still
they don't cross over, right?
Right,
and
course.
For Digest, we have about 450,000 emails, but not just, but 150,000 on Instagram. Like you would think organically,
you would think that they would
person who loves the newsletter would go, or and they just don't. So like when we market or when we push out editorial content or we have a paid activation, depending what it is, we treat them as different mediums because different people are looking at them.
Of course. And like I said, I subscribe to New Jersey Digest because I like to know what farmer's market I'd like to go to on a weekend in the summer. Or when you guys have something about the top 5 of this. Yeah. I love that stuff and I'm like, I get that because I know I'm going to get it every week and I'll forward it to my friend Mike and say, hey, do we want to go do this? And it's easier than looking on Instagram because usually I'm on Instagram looking for sunglasses or lip gloss, or dog posts, you know what I mean? Or Eagles posts. I'm not really looking too crazy for things I want to do on Instagram. So that's it. I think it's just about how people consume Instagram.
So funny story. My sister, Anthony, she's amazing. And she is a huge Digest fan, even like without like me, like having anything to do with it. She writes for Patch. She's very community minded, right? Like hugely community minded. So when the farmer's market came out, like she never writes to me. She never bothers me about it. She never like anything. Out of nowhere, I guess they included the one from Rosa Park, which was pretty good, but not the one from Summit. And like she gave me like a lot of shit for it. Like,
yeah, right.
I didn't write it. I'm the publisher. But
still, people like their farm. Yeah, they're really into this stuff. And you're probably looking at you as like, well, you're the source on this. Why didn't you put my favorite one in there?
So it got better. So we ran into Peter Candia, who's our food editor, and like she like kind of mentioned it, and he added it.
I would have done the same thing. If there was like my favorite farmer's market, which is in Collingswood, New Jersey, which is South Jersey, which is where I grew up.
Huge restaurant area, Collingswood.
Yeah. They really. I used to, when I was in college, I worked on that strip in an insurance agency. I was just like, a file clerk. But I go back there a lot because like when I used to go walk to get lunch in college, there was nothing there, and now it's just great. It's like really hopping. Yeah, it's a really great strip there, and they have a farmer's market every Saturday, and I try to make it down there as often as I can. time because I always buy things I love there, whether it's like, I get treats from like homemade treats for my dogs. They have dried flowers. They have a lot of great stuff there. It's a really great farmer's market. They always have Romanesco, which I can never find, which I think is the greatest food in the whole wide world. But I look for this kind of stuff. Like that's the kind of stuff I'm consuming because I'm looking for stuff I want to do when I'm not working.
All right. So let's say you're watching and like I said, if you're looking for music representation, check out Adam Splitter.
Adam Splitter. Yes.
So Adam Splitter.
Splitter.
And,
people say Smasher. It's not Smasher.
Yeah, Adam Splitter. But let's just say whatever reason, they might not have the resources or they're not ready yet, but they have to kind of do it, themselves. So let's get a good soundbite out of you. What are kind of Amy's top 1 or 2, maybe 3 tips on starting, your own PR for your own music until you
if you're not ready or you can't afford it. I get this question all the time. I get this from bands all the time. I always tell them, whatever you do, play locally and make friends with your people in your local market. Make friends with New Jersey. Yes. Yeah. Make friends with the Aquarian. Make friends with WSOU. Make friends with the PSC, the station in Wayne. Yeah. Make friends with them. Send them your music. Reach out to them. Go on their website. Reach out to the music director, the promotions director. Make friends with your local venues. The old school way. Do it. Play the local dive bar. Try to get on, if there's a national act playing.
Go to Crossroads.
Yeah. Or go to Dingbats in Clifton. Yeah. Try to just make friends with your locals because that's how, if there's no buzz in your local market, how's there going to be a national buzz on you?
Good point.
Like you have to just be really visible. If you had like years ago, Heath Miller, who used to be in New Jersey, he had XSDB. He used to book Club Chrome, which doesn't exist anymore. He papered everywhere. You get his flyers everywhere. He had shows all the time and bands. I remember once I went into a Best Buy in Secaucus and this band tried to say, hey, we got to bring 5 people in order to get, I get into all his shows for free. So you're asking the wrong person. They saw I had a music shirt on. Yeah. But stuff like that, it's just be really... nobody's going to work harder for your band than you. And you'll get to a point where you don't have to, all you have to do is work on making music and playing live. And then you'll be able to pay people to do the rest of that for you. But you got to start that buzz yourself because it's not going to just happen in a vacuum or it's just not going to magically happen. It's never going to be overnight. And if it is, it was a really long night and there was probably a big bender that you were on, but you really just have to keep your eye on the prize and you really have to want it because it's competitive out there. Right. It's like even working in the music industry, it was competitive to get in. You got to want it and you got to show why you should pick me, pay attention to me, why. And that's just by being visible and there's a fine line between being persistent and being a punisher. Yeah. Don't be a punisher. Just be persistent.
Be persistent. Now, what about somebody who's looking to get into PR and kind of be on the other side where you are? And, is it, should they maybe scope out clients that they want to pick up? Should they maybe start getting media relations and then going to people saying, hey, do you want to be featured here? I have a really good relationship with these kind of outlets.
How to be a PR person, how to get clients.
How do you break into it? Yeah.
Well, how to break into it. I do a lot of conversations with college students about this all the time because like at the level I'm at, I have relationships going back 2 decades. Yeah. So I'm working with managers I've been working with for years. Correct. They got a new band or I'm working with bands that I've been working with since the 00s. But I tell people the same thing that I just said about bands. Partner up with a local band that you see that's buzzing, that they're playing the local dive bar every weekend. Partner with them and say, hey, let's work together. Maybe we can get some photographers to shoot you. Maybe we have some writers come out. Just and just work in your market. Like try to make yourself local. It's like what I explained to I'll have a French band message me and say, hey, we really want to be big in the US. How big are you in France? Like make a buzz in Europe, in your home country market first.
Land and expand.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's like, if you're not going to be coming to the US to tour, then you're not giving us much to tell the local media. Okay, here's a record. It's good. Awesome. Are they coming to play? Am I going to get to see them? If they can't see you in the flesh, it's just going to limit what you can do. So that's what I say. It's just like, try to get embedded with your local market. Always, never ignore your local market. Especially if you're in New Jersey. I mean, this is the greatest country in the world, in my opinion. But New Jersey, there's a lot going on here. Some of the best bands are from here. There's a lot of bands that play locally. There's a lot of venues and there's a lot of media. Just make friends with them. Do your homework. Do some Google elbow grease. Roll up the sleeves. Pay attention to where you're at.
So you worked really hard to get where you're at, and I think you're being a little humble about it because you did a lot of big names and you earned it. Can you share us one story of the craziest story on how you landed a client? What did you do to kind of get the client, or maybe tried something crazy and it didn't work, but maybe let's say one that worked, so we can maybe hopefully share the name. But one of the craziest stories that you did to land the client.
Well, this would be more like, this is my actual process, that it's not a specific thing. it's just a general thing that I say all the time to bands. I'm like, first of all, nobody's going to care as much as I care. I'm going to always care way more than I get paid to care. If the contract runs out, I don't clock out. If I'm working on something, I'm still going to do it. And that's why people stay with me, because they see that I'm in the shit. I give way too many fucks, and I'm always going to give way more fucks than you're ever going to pay me. And the reason is this: I don't want to do anything else. I have friends that my brother tells me this because he works in the casinos in Atlantic City, and he says, man, some days I get to work and I'm looking at my watch 15 minutes after I clock in, wondering my day is over. I've never had that day. And I have friends at 5 o'clock, boom, I'm not a drinker, but still, they go right to happy hour. That's not me. I might be getting a text at 9 o'clock saying, boop, this photo pass, somebody showed up, they're not on the guest list, you didn't submit them for a photo pass, or somebody texted me at 2 a.m. on a Saturday saying, Amy, I fucked something up. Sorry, am I allowed to curse? It's okay. I effed something up. But I don't want to do anything else, so it's in my best interest to be the best. And I quote Axl Rose all the time. You think somebody's going to do a better job than me? Let me see you try, because it ain't going to happen. And I know that might sound obnoxious, but that's how I live my life. I always put 110% into everything, even though you can really only put 100% into something. But, I tell people that. I say, you think somebody's going to care more than me? They're not. You know, think somebody's going to fight harder than me? They're not.
How about on the editorial side? I'm a writer, I'm a publisher. I do some content, obviously. And I'm hit or miss. It's weird. I have a very good track record at guest acquisition on my podcast. I been punching way to my weight class for podcast guests for a while. And that's one of the things that make it easier, because what happens is somebody says, hey, who did you do? And I'll say whoever I did. And it makes it easier, right? But sometimes it's hard to get in front of some of these bands and some of these bands' PR agents. Yeah. What advice do you give to somebody looking to maybe interview some bigger names for editorial as a journalist, and get in front of the big bands and their publicists? That's
a great question as well, because it's like people don't understand sometimes. And sometimes I'll have people ask me and I turn them down right away, and they're like, you didn't even consider my request. Actually, I did. I already know what the criteria and the rules are for this specific artist. I know it, and this has all been decided before you ever thought about emailing me, because we have marketing meetings and strategy meetings ahead of these release campaigns, so we already know that. So my thing is that I have a band that, if I have a bigger band, they've been doing press 15 years. They've done it all. And I always want to keep them engaged with press. So I always tell the team and whoever's the day-to-day leading on my staff that is leading that campaign, let's come up with a tempo or 2 or 3 that they've never done. And let's try to get those. We might get all 3, we might get 0, but we're going to fight to try to get them. And that's going to keep them happy and interested in doing press, while we still get them to do the press they need to do. So that you always want to speak to, you always want to cover your base. You always want to make sure that your core or outlets that have supported you from day one are still getting their access to you. Let's just change it up and try to do it a fun or a different way. But if an outlet comes to me and, and it comes to me professionally, I said, somebody say, I have an outlet, I want to talk to the band. Can I have a link to your outlet? Who else has been on it? Yeah. What's the name of it? Oh, it's in the name. It's in the subject line.
Oh, my favorite is because we get pitched on both sides as I do not your level of PR, but I rep some people for PR, and you pitch, but also as a publisher, we get pitched all the time. Yeah. And my favorite is when we get pitched by publicists, or even outlets. They're like, oh, here's my outlet, but their name's at Gmail.
Yeah. Even that's a small thing, right?
Or they'll send stuff.
It's a Wix site,
or look at their muck rack, and it's like they haven't published anything for like 4 years.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, you expect me to jump on that? Like, I feel, but it's this thing. I always say, it's just request it. Send me a link to your outlet. Yeah. Tell me some of your biggest guests. Yeah. Some will send me a media kit, and there's some that will have a media kit and have 5 listeners, and then there's some that will have 100,000 listeners and not have a media kit. But we assess it. We quality assure every request we get, because we'll go, hey, maybe they might have requested one of our bigger bands, and maybe the band has said, I'm only doing this, and this. Yeah. But hey, we might have another band that makes perfect sense for you, and we'll have you do them. You do a great interview with them. The band comes back and raves about it. Then we'll say, hey, okay, maybe we'll upstream your other requests, and we'll ask if we have a great experience with a new outlet or an outlet that comes to us for a specific band. Yeah. It just depends on, hey, I'm always willing to work with somebody, but it's just that if they come at me professionally, great, because that's very helpful. I get 1,000 emails a day. Yeah. It's a lot of fucking email, so, and I try to
responsive on email though.
I am. I'm very much, because you know what? It's like, if I leave them, then they're going to overtake me. So I say I'm kind of quick on email, and I tell people it's not because I'm not trying to be, exchange pleasantries, but I got if you want me to get to your email, I need to boom, boom, hey, but luckily now I think 6 or 7 people who work for me. So I'm not doing a lot of that daily stuff, but I try to be responsive, because if I don't, then it's never getting answered. And I'm just really organized and type A about that kind of stuff. And I just don't like having a lot of emails in my inbox, because it's a source of anxiety.
So I want to ask you kind of a 2-part question, right? Which is hot in the PR space, pay for play. Yeah. As a publicist, and everything we discuss, everybody so far has been basically earned media. Yeah. That we discussed. No money changing hands. You're not paying any outlets.
No, we're just giving them the music and the access.
Correct. But now, especially in the music space, the trend is, hey, we can get you here or we can get you there, but there's a fee. Now, when I suggest that, let's say I'm the guy suggesting, let's say it's some reputable outlet. Well, it's not reputable if they want to get paid, but let's say it's a reputable opportunity. Do you present that to your client and say, listen, it's up to you? Or do you say, no, we're only looking for earned press?
We really try. We don't really do a lot with sponsored, SponCon, as they like to call it, sponsored content. We don't do too much with that. Yeah. We tend to funnel that over to the marketing side or the digital marketers.
Smart.
Because,
they have a budget anyway.
but they have the budget, but also like I'm not paying for this. And also it's like other media outlets know who's paying for pay for play. And then the coverage, to me, it's like, it gets a little bit of a stain on it. It's not legit because it was paid for. Do you really like this or don't you?
I think it's more prevalent in the music space than any other, in my opinion. Because I do a lot of press, and I do a little music press, and everywhere I ran into, they kind of talk to you, and then they hit you with here's the sponsorship fee. I was like, all right.
But it's just like, well, there are advertisements, but that's also like the labels will do that because they want to just advertise the release. Yeah. And that's just, it's different because they're not doing it because they're getting that. It's just helping to support. Yeah. Some outlets might put our band on the cover and we'll do an ad and they're just as a thank you. And it's just another impression. Correct. And it also helps that outlet be able to continue to publish their it's almost like not a thank you, but kind of it is, because it's not like it's still earned, but it's also, you're just doing that because you want that outlet to continue to be able to thrive and exist and pay its bills.
I know this is obvious to a lot of people, but for me, as I kind of go deeper into PR and that kind of stuff, paid media, to me, it's its own discipline as well. Yeah. Like if somebody says, hey, I have a paid media budget, I think somebody who has paid media experience for those impressions should do it. Because if you have a publicist do it, it might, like you said, not stain it, but it might stain it, or it may have an issue. Second question I have for you is, one of the hotter things nowadays is, because I had multiple publicists for myself, right? Mm-hmm. And when you hire publicists, I know you get results, but when you hire publicists, first thing they say is, we can't guarantee your results.
Of course, and you have to say that. I tell people, and I say, anytime somebody tells you, I can guarantee this, they're lying to you, because I can't guarantee anything. But what I can tell you is that my team and I, we will put our all into it. I have one person on my team who, when she gets a no, she goes, okay, well, I'm just going to ask a different question and get a yes. And she'll fight for it. And 7 out of 10 times she comes back with the yes. It's just a different way of approaching things. I can't promise you, but we're going to come up with an idea and we're going to come back with something. We're going to get you one of your tentpoles. And it might not be the week your album comes out. It could be 52 weeks later because we have to give the album legs. Yeah. But we'll bring you something that's going to knock your socks off, because that's what we do.
What about on the client side? A lot of people are like, well, I'm happy to hire as a publicist, but can I pay you, per placement? And that kind of stuff, and I know that's not a strategic, so I assume you frown upon that as well.
Oh yeah, I can't survive like that. Yeah. I mean, I have to get paid for the effort, because the time and effort still goes into it. Because that would be like me having a crystal ball saying, oh, the media might hate your music. Yeah. I've seen it happen, or not hate it, but they just might not connect with it. But that doesn't mean that the effort wasn't put in, and we tried to turn the stones over. You have to understand that this is a marathon, not a sprint. This is like going to take time. You got to educate media. You got to follow up. You got to chase them. But we're going to get into their inbox a lot faster than you are.
What do you do when you crush it? Because sometimes we've done campaigns where it's strictly earned media, and then we got them like so my center, I'm a digital marketer,
right? Of course,
right? And then if I do some PR as an ancillary thing for a campaign, I always attach a media value. Yeah. Right? So there was one campaign we did, and we just got it right. That one campaign, you just get it right,
slayed it,
and we got 10 million impressions. I think it was a value of $750,000 in earned media or media equivalent. and we were like, we're undercharging here, you know?
Right.
So is it where, like, if you kill it, do you have tears, or does it smooth out and you maybe say, hey, you got lucky, and not lucky on this one, but it's not always going to be like this, but like how do you handle when you win? Because that's
when we
easy.
have a campaign that we had like a baby band that we worked with that just came out of nowhere and media loved it. Rob Halford was talking about it in interviews. It just popped off because these are kids with really good talent. It just was that one rare band a year that just pops. And it popped. And, you know, it's, you know, the manager understands that, like, I need you for the rest of this band's career. And so we have a long-term relationship over that. And that comes out in the wash, I say, because, you know, there might be a couple slow months, but then the busy months, it all ends up coming out in the wash. That way, most of our business is built on retainers. That's the model I prefer because there's always, you're embedded with the project. It's not 3 months and out. Yeah. You know, I can still, you know, I can get an opportunity that comes in, and if I'm off a project, I'm going to give it to one I'm on. Yeah. So when I'm on a project for like 3 years, then you're always going to get that. When ABC producer comes in and says, we're doing a segment on a Christian band or a New Jersey band, I got a band for you right here. But when we kill it, you know, sometimes, you know, we say, hey, you know, we use that when we're, you know, maybe we're negotiating on the next record or something like that, or it's just going to be a long-term deal. When it's long-term, that to me is better than, you know, like I said, it all comes out in the wash.
Now, this does happen, I think, in all of our spaces where if you're doing client work, and I think this will resonate with a lot of people doing client work, is what do you do when you just, you know, perform, they're never happy, it's not the right fit, and you have to fire a client? How do you go about going?
Oh yeah, it's tough because I feel I'm so emotionally and professionally invested in projects. You know, and we are always going to put our, you know, my team is all people who love what they do and want to keep doing it. So it's in their best interest to also be the best at it. So people see it and people keep wanting to hire us, you know? When that happens, it's like when it happens on the other side with the clients is I want to make a change. Every single time that happens to me, it is like Rocky just punched me in the face, you know, like, or Mike Tyson just cracked me in the face because I'm like, you know what? Like it's hard. And when we have a project that is just not, we can't do anything. There's been projects where it's like, it's time to part ways because we're just not, you know, it's just not connecting anymore. We're just not, we can't make anything happen. And it sucks. It really is not fun to do because you're so invested in these people and their art. And a lot of my bands are like family to me. Like I care about these people as human beings and consider them like family. And when that happens, it's never an easy conversation. You know, I always take it personally because I take everything personally. It's my company. Yeah, you know, if I don't take it personally, then it's just work. And it's not just work to me.
I'm the same way. And I think this will resonate. Because we do like SEO and stuff. SEO and PR, and I think you'll appreciate this, are the only jobs you get fired for doing your job. And here's what I mean. Here's what I mean is if I do an SEO campaign and somebody gets really busy, they think they don't need me anymore. Then once it falls off, right? And then PR is the same way. They get big and they're like, oh, I'll just do it myself, or
I'll go to a bigger firm. Yeah.
So how do you handle, like, when you do the right thing, they get big and they kind of screw you?
Like I said earlier, it hits me and it keeps me up at night. I don't mean that as a figure of speech. It happened to me recently, and I'm crushed over it. Like, and it's still, I wake up in the middle of the night at like 4 a.m. and I go to like pee or something, and I'm like, man, why? I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, we have a great, you know, and it's never anything. It's just like, hey, you know, we want another voice or we want to try something new, and I'm just like, but we kill it for you. Like, sometimes bands just want to make a change. And I respect that, but it's devastating to me when it's like when somebody comes in and it's like they make these big promises, and you're just kind of like I said earlier, you think somebody's going to do a better job than me? So let me see you try.
I hate to be too transactional, but I did have one deal where I installed a success fee. They wanted to be big enough to be on one of the Housewives or one of the big shows. And then sure enough, and she had talent too, and she was going to get it anyway probably, but we kind of built her up. We had a success fee, and they literally landed like shortly thereafter the expiration. So it was a little, you could argue that we could have got it, but it was like, you know what, it is what it is. But I started doing my contracts a little different now for a few reasons. One, I have a breakup clause. So if you really want out, you can get out, but there's a fee. Right?
Yeah, that's smart.
The second is I'll do a success fee. So if we do well, like let's say you have a baby band or we have a baby project and we blow it out and they get X, we cover our upside, right? But do you recommend having stuff in your contracts to protect you from some of these type of successes, not just failures,
I
but
think
successes?
if you have that good relationship with the label and the manager, they're going to take care of you, because in the music business, everybody knows everybody, and that world
right?
travels.
Yeah.
You know, and I know that if we had a great success, or I know a band is loyal to me for 15 years, well, of course we're always going to take care of each other. We're going to find ways to always make that, you know. And sometimes when we have a band that overperforms, you know, the best thing that they can do is just tell other people about us, so we get more business. So like, I'm turning down clients every day, you know, because we have this very specific what we do. We have very specific on what we take on. So, you know, I could take a lot of projects but I'm not going to do that if it's not right, if we can't do anything or we don't like it, you know. But there's projects that we love, certain bands, maybe musically, somebody might personally love them more, but it's not about what we like. It's about, there's a reason somebody's going to like this, and we need to find those people through our work. Nice. So, you know, and there's always a reason. Somebody thought this record needed to get made and put out by a record label. So we find what that reason is. We find what people are going to connect with that, and then we put that out into the world.
Do you ever do stuff where an independent, I saved up money or have resources, I'm an independent, I want you to rep me, and then if I get picked up by a label, you'll get a success fee or anything like that, or you just like, I'll just rep you. I'll do my best.
But we talk about it's a lot of conversation where I'll say, if you guys get signed, then take me with you. Yeah. You know, I have a couple labels that have bands have switched labels, and they say, hey, we're bringing our PR with us because people got us here, and we want to continue to work with them. Especially if you're telling somebody's story for so long. I'm the keeper of the keys. You know, I know everything. Yeah. You know, I've been the one that's been dealing with everything for you for years. That's a resource that you can't buy anywhere else. So I try to remind a lot of our clients about the intangibles that you know, what do they say? You know, that those old credit card commercials, blah, 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 priceless. Yeah. That's priceless, what we bring to the table with doing that. So
you being in the game a little bit, and the bands themselves, obviously they age out a little bit. Maybe they don't go on many tours, or maybe they're not doing as many, they break up or that kind of stuff. How do you kind of get a new roster in organically, or do you do outbound or stuff like maybe PR? Like how do you kind of get the new crop of artists into?
A lot of times it's just relationship based. Like, you know, I'm still working with 90% of my old Roadrunner coworkers. Oh, awesome. Everybody all works it because Roadrunner really doesn't exist anymore. It's like an imprint now through in the Warner system. But all those people that I worked with for decades all have new jobs, and they all say, "Oh, I need good PR. I'm calling Amy." Smart. All of it is relationship based, and managers, Killswitch engages managers. Most of their projects, they say, "Oh, gotta call Amy." You know, we work with Amy on everything. You know, that's because they know that I care. They know that we're going to have results. They know our team is going to fight for them and deliver for them. Yeah. And a lot of time, you know, my friend Justin, who I worked with at Roadrunner, he works at Q Prime, which is Metallica's management. Yeah. You know, and I've said to him for years, we want to work Volbeat, you know, and now we're doing that. You know, so it's just that. It's just I'm out a lot. I go to shows all the time, so that's where I'm very visible. I'm there. I'm out there. I'm living the life. You know, it's just people that I've worked with bringing me in and saying, "Oh, like Amy's always gonna freaking, you know, be a pit bull and latch on until and not let go." And that's just it's the reputational. I'm very blessed that people that I always said yes. I always hustled when I was starting out, and I built my reputation on that, you know, and I try to be humble about it. Yeah. But I know that's what people see.
You mentioned earlier, do you do crisis management and reputation management as part of your scope?
I do. I don't advertise it.
I don't either, because it's a dirty business.
It is. It's you know, and I think a lot of people got a taste of that with this whole Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni situation. Oh, I've been paying attention to that also because I actually I don't watch romantic comedies. I watched a movie and I loved it. It was so crazy. I was like, I don't like this crap, but I want to watch horror movies, you know. But I was like, yes, I've done it because it has ick. It can have the ick on it. Yeah. I tell myself and my team this is that I choose to believe that most of the people I work with are good people. Yeah. Sometimes good people can fuck up, and sometimes you might learn that they're not a good person, or they really are a good person and something's happening that's unfair. But I do it. Yes. I don't have, I get calls sometimes and I say, "Oh," and they get my number, it gets passed around, and it's just a matter of, you have to look at those cases as clinical. Yeah. You have to say, "I don't know what you did," because my dad used to volunteer at and I learned this from him. He used to volunteer at a prison. Oh, wow. And he would go in and work with the prisoners. And he was told by somebody, do not ask them what they did, and do not ask them, because these are guys who were in here for life, for murder, rape. You have granddaughters, you have daughters. Yeah. And my dad said I used to go in there and just go in there blind and not think about what they did and just try to help them in their lives where they are now. And, help them get in touch with their spirituality, with God, whatever. And I look at it that way. It's not as dramatic because these people are not in jail, but I try to look at it as whatever happened, give me the facts, and clinically, here's how we'll deal with it. Here's how we'll deal with it on socials. Here's how we'll deal with it. I will help you with your statement. I will tell you what not to do. I will tell you what to do. But yeah, like it's got some ick to it, but it can be lucrative, and it's also
more expensive.
And it's also not something where in that like the Justin Baldoni, Blake Lively thing. It's like there's damage going on there that we're trying to fix damage. Somebody says, an ex-girlfriend's trying to come back and say I did this stuff, and I'm like, okay, well, what happened? I'm like, you don't have to tell me everything, but like, give me your side. And a lot of times you read these stories and you're like, a lot of this stuff, you're just like, how you have to address it in a certain way. And it's really sad because a lot of times people don't realize public wants an immediate response to this, and people need to think about it for a day. These are people's businesses, their livelihoods, people that they've known for years.
I actually recommend people pause for a little bit and let kind of whatever, because it's almost like being on the lam, be away, see what comes out so you can address it. Because then if you address one thing and somebody else pops up, then you're playing
your apology is never going to be good enough. So what you're going to do is put the apology out and then go off socials for a week. Do not look at them. Do not say anything else. Because you know what? In a week, some other story is going to come up that I'm probably going to have to go fix. So, a lot of stuff that I've seen was like stuff you feel is kind of unfair sometimes for people. You just try to protect them and help them. And these people might have done something maybe inappropriate, but most of the time I've never seen it be anything criminal.
Well, so an offshoot of that, and it's kind of funny because I'm still watching the whole Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively thing as a kind of marketer as well, is kind of anti-PR. People want, like, especially like attorneys or publicists will outsource to you. And I got approached once. I didn't do it. I mean, I've done a lot of rep repair, a lot of crisis management. That I did, like I said, the ick is always on that, but you don't judge. Obviously I'm not going to do anything who essayed a child. I'm not going to do anybody who did essayed somebody. I'm not going to do somebody who
100%, me either.
I have certain stuff I just won't touch. But outside of that, if you did something, I'm not the arbiter of morality, right? Like if you had a stock scam, and it is what it is, right? So my point being is, and a lot of times in the rep management game, I really felt that, like, probably not that I judge, but about 80% of the times, a lot of people do get screwed, right? Yeah. So it's kind of like you go to help them. But one thing I learned, I did get approached a few times against anti-PR, like meaning you're going to do like negative press against this person. I've never done it because I don't want to be like liable, and it's gray, and it's super ick, right?
It's very it's ick and gray. It's like because it's like you don't want to damage. You don't know what the truth is sometimes because it's like he said, she said. But in these cases, it's like I wouldn't plant dirty stories. I would. That's not my work in crisis is. Somebody's saying something about me that's not true, or there's allegations, but there's no charges. There's a big difference there, I mean, even when I was a writer, you were writing about somebody who got accused of something. It's alleged 80 times in a 100-word post. You have to constantly do that. And nowadays, people, it's a very, people think that Twitter judge and jury. That's not how life works, So try to stay away from it. But
so it also strategy works. It matters too, because I've studied both what PR people do and what digital marketers do. We tend to just suppress it. So we figure, where can you hide a dead body? Second page of Google. So like if you push it down, you're good.
Nobody's going to that second page.
So we had a client who worked at a big corporation. He was upper mid-level management, did some really stupid stuff, and got fired. And people were typing in his name and where he worked. And sure enough, like he would get to like the final stage where he get an offer. I guess they would Google him and it would go dark, right? So this guy's making a lot of money and it was really hurting him. So we came up with the plan of attack. One was suppress, and that takes 6 to 9 months, and that's that best case scenario, right? The second one is ask. Like you can ask without being pushy, being polite. Maybe it's a little different for PR, but as a digital marketer, hey, we're a digital marketing firm. Manage the reputation so-and-so. What you have there, may be true, but it's really hurting our client. Would you mind taking it down? You gotta be careful what you say because you'll want that snapshot and put on.
Yeah, right? You don't want them exactly, so like outing you.
Correct. But a funny story is the story that we went to the number one, right? That was there. We asked them politely to take it down. They did, right? Wow. But the way Google works is if there's duplicate copy, one goes to 1 and one go like to 20, right? Yep. Because they can't do both, right? So when we removed the one, the second one was with Velsier, which is a large publishing company, that shot to number one in
Oh.
place of it.
Oh,
And
so
it was impossible to.
it's like backfired almost.
So like the whole thing is when you have something really happen online that's bad, have somebody who's experienced. Some people do hire both of us. You'll handle like the crisis,
Yeah, or somebody
and then,
scrub
and
stuff.
then you'll like come to us and be like, get it done.
Yeah, get stuff taken down. And it's like a lot of times I tell people, I'm like, I've had people ask me to take things that are fact based down. Well, this
Yeah,
is
it's
just
tricky.
a fact.
Yeah,
It's tough, or you said
Pretty
it.
sweet, yeah.
It's like it's really hard that way. People don't understand the difficulties of that. And that's why I tell people, think before you tweet, think before you post
The
something.
worst is when legal something happens and it's in like the court documents.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about like a lawsuit like where they are now. I'm talking about like actual judgments.
Yeah. It's out there. People don't realize that there's a lot of public records. So I always say, like, in my world, luckily it doesn't happen too much, but it does. And, in this past couple of years, there's just been a lot of, I think, people getting really angry online, and it's a small minority. And I think that people have to realize that usually that stuff does blow over. Yeah. And if you're not being charged, you know what I mean? You have to you have to think about these things. It's really difficult.
Before we wrap up, any social media advice for up and coming artists?
Post. I say be pretty regular with your postings. Make them be worthwhile, something that's clickable. Share music. Offer them something. Maybe hey, for the next first 5 followers get a free T-shirt, stuff like that. If you have the means to do that, or follow back anybody who follows you. Yeah. Try to just be a little accessible. And don't immediately slide into DMs asking them to check out your music, but give them something to chew on. Give them content. Give them a reason to follow you and not to unfollow you.
Okay. Your dream interview. You're allowed to come back here next week.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to host. Who is your dream interview that are dead and alive?
Dead and alive. Does it have to be music? It could be anything? I mean, I could narrow it down.
Let's stick with music only because
Yeah,
that's
just
your
I
space.
mean, that's just too big.
Because Jesus is probably big.
I know, right? I know. I would be like, oh God. Oh, no. I'm going to say alive is not music because he's my favorite human on the planet. I would say alive would be John Bernthal, who he's the Punisher. And he was also in that Sopranos movie. He's in The Bear. He's an actor. And
the guy, the chef. The chef?
No, he's not a chef. But
in
the show.
No, in The Bear.
I think,
the main character guy?
No. He's a supporting guy.
Which guy was he in The Bear?
I don't watch it, but my friends tell me all about it. I haven't watched
okay.
it yet because I have to Netflix. Not Netflix it. I have to binge watch it.
One of his cousins looks a lot like me in The Bear.
Oh, okay.
But I don't
all
think
right.
it's him.
Well,
otherwise you'd say you look like him.
My friends always give me a hard time because I've watched The Bear yet because I just say that because that's what he was currently in. But I always go back to The Punisher because that's who he's John Bernthal.
You gotta check that out. Okay?
He's amazing. He's my favorite. How
about music wise?
Music, I would say, who would I want to interview musically that I would like to speak to? Trying to think. I'm trying to narrow it down.
Oh, and any suggestions?
I know who I would say for me personally, just because I think she's so creative and so awesome. Lady Gaga. I love her.
Okay.
I love her. I haven't liked any of her music since Born This Way, but I just love her. And I think she's just very genuine. Like, I don't think she's as calculated as Taylor Swift or as untouchable as Rihanna. Yeah. There's just something about that old crew of pop stars where it was like Rihanna, Lady Gaga, Katy Perry. I always thought Lady Gaga. There's just something about her.
How about who passed?
Somebody who's not here anymore.
Maybe Elvis, Frank Sinatra.
Oh God. Oh my God. Who would I think? I'd have to think of somebody that I would like to talk to.
Kurt Cobain.
Oh my God. No, I would say actually Chris Cornell because he felt so mysterious to me.
That was
a singer of Soundgarden.
Yeah.
Because he was just like the embodiment of a rock star. And I would just like to sit down and pick his brain.
Interesting. All right, we're gonna wrap it up. How can people find you, Amy?
You can find me at adamslitterpr.com is our website. Needs to be. We're actually having it redesigned and updated. That's the easiest way.
Nice.
We need to update it. It's a little dated. I think we need to update it because a lot of bands have gone either recurring or alumni. You can find me on Instagram at Retto, RETTO 777. But all of we're on all socials. Adam Splitter PR is on all socials.
We'll put your link.
Yeah, that would be great. Thanks. Feel free to follow.
This is fun.
It was great. Awesome. Thank you.